Our series begins with Lee, who is a professional in tennis, and because of that, he participates in international matches despite his young age. In a crucial final match of an important tournament, Lee plays fantastically and wins the championship. However, the racket slips from his hand and is about to hit his younger brother's face. Lee looks at the racket in terror and runs towards his brother, but unfortunately, at that moment, while trying to save him, he falls and suffers a severe injury. After several years, we see Lee traveling back to Korea with his family after he has grown up. But despite all the years that have passed, he still can't forget the day of the match and can't get out of his head the idea that he can no longer play. Because of what happened, his life changed 180 degrees. After being the child prodigy everyone expected to become a champion, he became a gloomy person whose entire life consists of just drinking. While on the plane, he goes to drink and finds a beautiful girl named Kyung who has sauce on her face. He tries to talk to her to tell her to wipe it off because, honestly, it looks silly. But Kyung, at that moment, thinks he is flirting with her and tells him not to bother himself because she is taken. So Lee is forced to wipe his own face to hint to her that she should wipe hers. Kyung then understands and is embarrassed by her appearance, so Lee gives her a tissue, but he trips and falls, making a fool of himself again. Kyung's laptop is about to fall, but she doesn't care about him. She runs to catch the laptop and grabs it before it falls. After that, she goes to check on Lee, who, as soon as he sees her, remembers a little girl who looked like her and feels confused. So he tells her he is fine and asks her to leave. Lee then drifts off and remembers what happened to him after the match. At that time, he heard his parents talking about him and realized they were very upset because he wouldn't be able to play again, even though they had spent a lot of money to get him a good coach. The real shock, however, came when he heard them asking his grandmother to raise him because he was no longer useful to them, and they wanted to focus on and properly train his younger brother to become an even better tennis player than Lee. This was because Lee couldn't play again due to the injury he sustained while saving his younger brother. Lee becomes very upset and runs after his parents, repeatedly calling out for his mother, but unfortunately, she doesn't care and walks away, leaving him as he runs and then trips. His medal falls into the river, and he falls in too, but a girl saves him. From that very first moment, he falls in love with her and lives on the hope of finding her again. After that, they arrive at the airport, and his father makes an agreement with him to dress exactly like his brother, Shin. This is because Shin has become a famous athlete, and his father doesn't want fans to bother him, so he gathers the fans around Lee instead, putting him in danger. But when they discover he is not Shin, they treat him terribly, push him, and he looks so bad that it becomes difficult for Kyung. She helps him, but while she is helping him, their bags get accidentally switched. After that, Lee goes to board the plane with his family, but they are actually not going to the same place. We then see Kyung talking about the research she is working on, and it turns out she is a psychologist conducting many studies on memory. She has discovered that all of a person's bad memories are gathered in just one place and can be erased. At the same time, Lee returns home and is very upset with his family, but he doesn't speak up because he has gotten used to their neglect. This is very clear when they start eating, and Lee objects because he doesn't like boiled chicken, something he says every time but no one ever cares because Shin is getting all the attention. Even their dog is treated better than him. At the same time, Lee gets a call from his friend, Park, who asks him if he will attend a reunion party. Lee tells him he doesn't know, but most likely he won't go. Park then reminds him that it's an important opportunity to find his first love. But Lee is discouraged and thinks that even if he finds her, she won't love him because he has become nothing but a failure. After that, he meets a girl who tells him she admires him. Because he is so discouraged, he tells her she must mean Shin, his brother. She tells him she means him because she fell in love with tennis because of him and asks him to show her the medal he won back then. He talks to her sadly and tells her it is lost to him. Then, Kyung calls Lee and informs him that their bags were switched at the airport. She keeps yelling at him because he didn't get her number at the airport and cared enough to return her bag. The idea is that Lee is completely irresponsible and didn't carry the bag, honestly, so he hangs up on her and then goes to his job at a sports management agency. Unfortunately, he is treated very badly by his manager Man, who sees him as truly pathetic and throws papers in his face. This is just because Lee mentioned an injury concerning On, the player who told him she admired him. Because of this incident, everyone gives him a hard time. Even On, who admired him, now sees him as a failure. Lee is very upset by everyone's looks. Suddenly, he feels very tired and goes to the hospital. There, he sees Kyung and refuses to let her treat him because she is a psychologist, while he is complaining of pain in his hand. Kyung tells him his problem is psychological, not physical, and that the pen he is holding is actually trembling because of his psychological condition. Of course, Lee doesn't believe her, so Kyung pinches him, and he jumps up from the pain. She tells him she is sure it is his psychological state and that all he needs to do is improve it. He gets very angry and tells her he has tried very hard but has failed, and feels like he will die before he can get better. After that, Kyung finds out from the hospital records, under the name Lee, that he is the same young man whose bag was switched with hers, so she regrets not taking the opportunity to get her bag back. The next day, Shin sees his reunion invitation and wants to go in Lee's place. He snatches the invitation from Lee, who tells him he doesn't have to take everything from him. At least he should leave him his old life. Shin doesn't care about what he says, and is planning to go anyway, so he leaves him. Then, Shin goes to meet the director supervising Kyung's research, who is also Lee's friend and the one overseeing his health as an athlete. By coincidence, Shin sees the memory erasure research there and thinks to himself, if only they could do it for Lee and finally get rid of that burden that fills their house. After that, we see everyone at the hospital very excited to see the results of Kyung's research. But suddenly, the person holding the mouse trips, and the mouse escapes from the box. Kyung goes crazy because the success of her research depends on that mouse. She keeps looking for it everywhere, but the mouse escapes from the place they are in. Suddenly, a car comes and runs over it. At that moment, Kyung feels her heart will stop from the shock. She keeps looking at the mouse, very upset, and it turns out that the one who hit it is Lee, who only cares that the car is now dirty with the mouse's blood and he had just washed it. Kyung gets angry with him and tells him he has no blood in him because he doesn't care about the mouse's life, which he just killed. He is honestly surprised and tells her she is exaggerating. It's just a mouse. She sits down and tells him this mouse was part of a very important research that would have benefited many people, and he definitely won't understand her because he has never been able to benefit anyone before, since he is a failure. Because of what was said, Lee feels humiliated. After that, Kyung goes to bury the mouse and writes beside its grave something about sacrifice, as if it has become a national hero. After burying it, she returns to the hospital and asks the research committee to let her continue, but this time on a human, so that what happened with the first mouse doesn't happen again. At the same time, Lee is completely broken down and decides to end his life, so he jumps into the river, but he is rescued and transferred to the hospital. He even fails at ending his own life. The important thing is that Shin feels guilty towards Lee, because if Lee hadn't saved him from the racket, his life wouldn't have been destroyed. So Shin goes to talk to Kyung's director and asks him to help his brother and perform the memory erasure on him. The director then decides to make Lee the subject on whom the experiment will be performed, and he indeed performs the experiment and erases all the bad memories. The next day, Lee wakes up, and Kyung looks at him, excited to see the result of the experiment. She asks him if he remembers her. He gets close to her and tells her, of course, he remembers her, and it turns out he remembers her as the girl he loved when he was little. At that moment, Kyung tells herself the experiment failed. Instead of forgetting the bad memories, he has gone completely crazy. After that, research is conducted on Lee's condition, and Kyung is waiting to be fired because of the experiment's failure. But she is surprised to find out it succeeded. As for Lee himself, he doesn't remember his family because they were the worst memories in his entire life. Shin asks him what the last thing he remembers is, and Lee tells him it was the World Junior Championship. At that moment, Shin understands that Lee has forgotten all the bad memories. He gets nervous when Lee asks why he is here, so he lies to him and tells him he fell down the stairs, hiding from him that he tried to end his life. After that, the director talks to Lee's family to explain his condition to them. Lee's mother is surprised that he forgot them and understands that they were the worst memories in his life, honestly. As for Lee himself, he completely transforms into a different person. After being gloomy, he becomes energetic, cheerful, and confident in himself. But the only problem is that he treats Kyung as if she is his girlfriend. This dialogue, of course, annoys her because she can't stand him, so she keeps thinking of an explanation for his condition and suspects something went wrong. Instead of bad memories being erased, they were replaced with better ones. The next day, Lee returns home and has changed 180 degrees. Even his clothes don't please him. Every time he picks up something from his old clothes, he says, "What is this crap?" and throws it away. Shin is surprised by the change that happened. Yes, he knew Lee would change, but he didn't expect the change to be like this. As for his family, they feel they are facing a completely different person from Lee, especially since he has become narcissistic. At night, Kyung talks to the director and explains to him that something went wrong and that Lee thinks she is his girlfriend. This might be a side effect of the procedure. The director tells her she must get closer to Lee and discover what went wrong because he doesn't believe the research succeeded and won't accept failing again. After that, Lee goes to the hospital to change his bandage and overhears Kyung talking to her mother, and it's clear she is stubborn. He tells her, "How do you talk to your mother-in-law like that?" At that moment, Kyung feels the situation is getting out of control, so she confesses to him that she is not his girlfriend, but Lee thinks she is joking. The next day, An goes to talk to Lee and is surprised that he doesn't remember her, but she notices he has become charismatic, so she becomes attracted to him again. In the middle of the conversation, An brings up the medal that Lee lost. At that moment, Lee feels confused and starts seeing scenes from his bad memories, which were supposedly erased. He becomes very tired and is transferred to the hospital. After that, Kyung talks to Park, Lee's friend, and asks him what happened on the day of the incident, meaning what made Lee think of ending his life. He tells her he feels guilty because he was the reason. On the day of the mouse incident, he called Lee and told him he found his childhood love and that she would be with them at the reunion party. But when Lee went, he discovered she was dating Shin, who was at the party. At that moment, Lee was destroyed and felt that everything was slipping away from him because of his brother. Kyung feels sympathy towards him and goes to supervise his condition. She overhears his mother talking to him and telling him she is a harsh mother because she abandoned him after finding out he wouldn't be able to play again. She cries as she remembers the day of the incident when the grandmother sent Lee the food he loved, but she took it and gave it to Shin. When Lee objected, she yelled at him and made him think they live off the money Shin earns, meaning, ultimately, he is useless, and the most important thing to her is Shin. At that moment, Lee breaks down and tells her she doesn't love him. The most important thing to her is to keep Shin happy, and she has never acted like his mother. He walks away and leaves her, broken down. After that, he tried to end his life. Lee's mother then wakes up from these memories and feels guilty and wishes Lee would get better so she can make up for everything that happened. After Kyung hears this, her sympathy towards him naturally increases. After that, he wakes up and goes out to play tennis, but the ball was about to hit Kyung had he not blocked it at the last moment. Kyung notices he blocked the ball with his right hand, which he couldn't use back then, so she is sure he has improved. She repeats to herself that she won't take him back to zero and must help him. She lies to him at that moment and tells him she really was his first love. Approximately, Lee doesn't believe her from the first moment. From that moment on, he starts chasing Kyung everywhere, assuming they are dating. After that, she meets his family and deals with them as if she is his girlfriend. The idea is that she can't bear the idea that she is lying, and she is always upset. Because of this feeling of guilt, she decides to distance Lee from her, so she lies to him and tells him she is actually dating someone else. But that doesn't stop her from saying she was his girlfriend at some point. Lee feels she is lying because she basically doesn't leave this place. She tells him her boyfriend is with her at the hospital and introduces her friend, Tae, to him as her boyfriend. At the same time, the police are investigating and want to know the reason that made Lee think of ending his life. Shin informs them there was an argument between Lee and his mother, and because of this argument, he decided to jump into the river, but he followed him and saved him. The officer is surprised because Shin said he saved him in a very short time and feels Shin is playing with the words. The next day, Kyung agrees with Tae that they will pretend to be dating so that Lee stays away from her. After that, Lee goes to work and deals with the employees as if he is a famous star. Man is surprised and asks him, "What brought you here anyway? I basically considered you quit because you were absent without prior notice." But this time, Lee is completely different in his dealings and speaks confidently. Man remembers that Shin told him Lee lost his memory, so he agrees with him to convince An to sign with them, and in return, he will give him his job back. Lee agrees and says it's a very easy matter. At the same time, Shin is walking, and clearly in a hurry, so a ball falls from him and lands next to Kyung. She yells at him because he is dropping balls and not paying attention that this is a hospital and someone might fall because of him. He apologizes to her, and at that moment, the rest of the balls fall and the kids who were playing start tripping. So Kyung lies down on the ground to block the balls, and honestly, she looks very silly. The important thing is that Shin goes to her to thank her because she helped him and gives her a pain relief drink as a gift. She takes it and asks him to leave because she has a patient who needs to be examined. He informs her that he is the patient and reveals that he has OCD and his condition is very difficult, but he hides it from everyone. He is upset by the idea that his family wants him to succeed all the time and no one cares about what he wants. The next day, Kyung is surprised when she finds a girl she doesn't know sleeping next to her, calling for her mother while angry. It turns out the girl's name is Sae, and her mother is Kyung's mother's friend and neighbor, and they were childhood friends, but their relationship wasn't the best. They always argued until Sae traveled to Italy because she was living with her mother. When she came to Korea, she had no choice but to come to Kyung's house. The idea is that Kyung is upset because her mother didn't even think to ask her opinion before letting a stranger sleep next to her. The idea is that after that, she discovers her key medal is lost. So she is very upset, especially since it was a gift from Tae. She ignores Lee, of course, who is trying to talk to her and keeps looking for it until night. But Lee stays next to her anyway and is very kind to her, thinking that if he treats her kindly, she might think of him and love him. But Kyung is annoyed by his closeness, and not only that, she argues with him, so Lee gets very upset and feels hurt. The next day, Kyung sees Sae being harassed by two guys, but Sae doesn't care about them and goes to talk to Kyung. Kyung completely ignores her because she thinks Sae will take her place in the house, and even with the neighbors. At the same time, Lee talks to Man and reminds him of their agreement. Man tells him he will employ him, but only after he sees On's signature on the contract. So Lee goes to talk to her and tries to get her to sign. She agrees, but on the condition that he fulfills her wish and plays a tennis match with her in front of Shin. Of course, at that moment, Lee agrees because he doesn't want to lose such an important opportunity. For the first time in many years, he holds a tennis racket and starts playing. I said the guy would amaze us, but unfortunately, his play is very bad because it has been years since he played. He even hits the ball into her head, so he looks bad and wants to run away. But On quickly goes and brings him back and makes him continue playing. Of course, they both lose to their brother. After the match, On is upset with Shin because he beat her and ruined his image. Lee sees her at that moment and gets close to her, so she gets nervous and asks him to give her a chance to explain. The guy doesn't seem interested and tells her he just came to see his reflection in her glasses. But the problem is that security sees them and takes them to the administration, and honestly, she looks very bad. After that, Shin is in the supermarket and by coincidence bumps into Kyung, so the eggs he has break. He considers this very bad and thinks he will lose his next match. Kyung tries to make him understand he is exaggerating, but he is convinced of his words, so it becomes difficult for her. She decides to help him get rid of the obsession and negative thoughts he has and stays next to him, giving him some advice regarding his condition. She spends a very long time with him. The strange thing is that when she comes to leave him, Shin feels he doesn't want her to go and doesn't understand why he feels this way, but he tries not to care about the matter. He then calls Lee to take his visa from him. Lee tells him he is far from him, basically lying so he doesn't return the visa while he is actually next to him. Suddenly, Shin remembers Kyung's key medal and realizes he has it by mistake, so he calls out to her. But at that moment, Lee sees him and decides to return it to Kyung himself to take advantage of the opportunity and get closer to her. So he grabs Shin and makes him fall to the ground before Kyung sees him. Shin is very surprised and tells him he thought he was far from him, but he doesn't care much about the matter. He feels a good feeling because for the first time in years, he feels real grass. And for the first time, Shin talks to Lee as if he is truly his brother, not just a failure living with them whom they think about. They remember their childhood memories, and it is clear that Shin is good inside. It was his family's treatment of Lee that made him deal with Lee in a very harsh way. After that, Lee goes to watch On's playing style and notices it is slow because of her old injury, so he decides to use this point to his advantage. The next day, he talks to her and informs her he decided to open his own company and convinces her to sign with him in exchange for helping her treat her injury. Of course, she agrees because he is the reason she fell in love with tennis. When Man sees On, he guesses she will sign with them, so he is happy and informs Lee he will employ him as he promised. But the shock is that Lee tells him he modified the agreement and that On will work with him because he will open his own company and submit his resignation. Of course, Man is shocked by his words and keeps yelling, telling him he will tell everyone that On is injured. Lee tells him not to bother himself because he will announce that On is on leave for a few months until she undergoes rehabilitation. He walks in front of him with complete confidence. At the same time, Kyung discovers she didn't get her bag back from Lee, so she thinks of calling him. But she feels silly because he has lost his memory and definitely doesn't remember where the bag is. But after a long thought, she calls his mother. When she finds out they are busy with Shin's match, she decides to take advantage of the opportunity and tells her she wants a copy of Lee's ID for hospital procedures. She convinces her to go to the house and get it herself. Kyung keeps looking everywhere until she finds the bag, takes it, and is walking. But suddenly, Lee enters and sees her. Honestly, at that moment, she gets very nervous and tries to convince him she just came to take a picture of his ID. He tells her, "Is my ID so big that you need to take it in a bag?" But she is smart and tells him it is her bag and she brought it with her because she was in a hurry and didn't have time to take it home. Although the words aren't coherent, luckily for her, Lee believes her. One day, Lee comes to the hospital to give Kyung flowers. Suddenly, Se appears in her face and asks her to go with her to the supermarket to get some things and make dinner together. Kyung goes so as not to embarrass her, but she doesn't know how to cook and tries again to create distance between them. The next day, we see Lee walking, and all the girls see him as a handsome young man, which gives him an unnatural confidence in himself. After that, he goes to the horse race and takes Kyung with him. She agrees because she decided to get closer to him to monitor the results of her experiment. We see him at that time constantly trying to make Kyung hate Tai, but she doesn't care and asks him why he brought her to the horse race. He tells her he will take her with him and goes to a big investor to offer him to invest in his company. The idea is that the investor refuses, but Lee is determined to convince him. He shows him he is smart by talking to him about the horse race and convincing him at that moment not to bet on horse number 5. He explains his point of view, and Kyung supports Lee's words because, from her perspective as a psychologist, she saw the horse wasn't comfortable and wouldn't be able to run at full speed. Lee bets on horse number 3 because, from his point of view, it will win. But basically, the investor is afraid Lee is making fun of him, so he kicks him out. But luck plays with Lee, and horse number 3 wins. The investor sends for him to come back and talk to him. At that moment, Lee acts charismatically and tells him he is busy and they should call him later. After that, Kyung prepares a surprise for Tai, and it turns out she is attracted to him and wants to confess her feelings to him. She is very excited for the romantic moment that will happen between them. But by coincidence, she hears Tai talking to her friend on the stairs and finds out Tai actually loves her friend and is deceiving Kyung to exploit her and benefit from the success of her research. At that moment, Kyung feels stupid, runs to the surprise location, destroys everything before it comes, and breaks down crying. At that moment, Lee sees her and understands the conversation, so he tries to comfort her. But as usual, she deals with him coldly, so he walks away, upset. He argues with Tae. After that, Shin sees Kyung upset and offers to take her and spend a nice time together. The idea is that Shin's feelings are moving towards her, and he keeps thinking about her while laughing. The next day, Tae asks to meet Kyung. She goes to meet him, basically not able to stand him, and Tae continues flattering her and trying to show her he is attracted to her. She goes crazy and thinks of throwing water in his face, but she controls herself. When she finds all his talk is about the research, she is sure he wants to exploit her, so she walks away and leaves him so she doesn't commit a crime. But after that, she finds out he made modifications to Lee's condition himself because he wants to put himself in the research in any way. She goes crazy and breaks his desk and walks away after scolding him. At night, she goes to Lee's house, where he lives alone. Lee is surprised she came at this time. She informs him she decided to be the doctor responsible for his company. At that moment, he is shocked, but Kyung sets a condition. Lee must not think of dating her. Lee is honestly upset and refuses to work with her and asks her to leave. When she refuses to leave, Lee tries to force her out. She tells him he can't kick out a girl at this time, so he finds it difficult and leaves her. After that, Kyung goes to talk to On and tries to convince her to treat the injury she has so she can play well. On refuses because she is discouraged and feels like a failure. When Kyung finds out she is determined to convince her, she deceives her and tells her to get treatment, but she literally hangs her on the physical therapy equipment and leaves her until Lee comes to take her down, laughing at her silly appearance. At the same time, Shin goes to the hospital under the pretext of meeting Kyung's director, but he is actually looking for her. He is shocked when he finds out she resigned temporarily. After that, Shin meets Se by coincidence, and it turns out Shin was dating Se, but they broke up, and because of that, neither of them could stand the other again. At night, Shin holds a gold medal and keeps looking at it, remembering the time he saved Lee and took it from him. It is clear he is hiding a big secret. At the same time, Kyung is drinking with Se and is upset because she remembered the despicable Tai. She tells Se about him and envies her because she doesn't have worries like hers. Se tells her the one she sees in front of her is not the complete truth. And it is also clear she is hiding something. Suddenly, a bodyguard comes and wants to take Sei away from her by force to return her to her mother. It turns out Sei ran away from her family. Kyung is drunk and completely lost, so she tries to talk to him to make him leave. He refuses. At that moment, Sei intervenes, and with one move, knocks him to the ground. The next day, Shin is surprised when he finds Kyung standing, watching him as he trains. She tells him she wants to know more information about tennis so she can provide consultations to players. Shin takes advantage of this opportunity to get closer to her and agrees with her to teach her to play tennis. But he regrets it after less than 2 minutes because she hits the racket in his face and was about to knock out his teeth. After that, by coincidence, Lee sees Kyung and keeps watching her from afar. Suddenly, he sees someone walking behind her, and Kyung also feels that, so she gets nervous and runs. The person tries to run after her again. At that moment, Lee tries to catch him, but misses him and runs after him until he catches him. He is surprised when he finds out it is Tai, who tells him he did that to apologize to Kyung. Lee hits him because he was walking behind Kyung like a thief. Lee walks away, but Tae stops him and asks him if he is sure Kyung is his first love. Lee gets upset from the question and walks away, leaving him. After that, he goes after her, and she has gone to his house. But the surprise is that he sees Shin there. At that moment, Shin pretends he doesn't know Kyung. Lee introduces Kyung to him as the doctor of his company and also his first love. He tells him how he met her the first time when she saved him from drowning. After that, Kyung walks with Shin, and it is clear that Shin is upset by the idea that Kyung is his brother's first love. The next day, Lee talks to On and informs her that Kyung will be the doctor of the team and asks her to treat her well. On is very surprised by Lee. He is very interested in Kyung. She asks him if they are dating. He gets nervous and avoids the answer because he notices On doesn't like Kyung at all. At the same time, Sei gets in Shin's car against his will and forces him to take her to the village where she was born. Not only that, she also makes him help the farmers. Shin trips and falls and keeps screaming while cursing her. After that, he argues with her and refuses to take her back, leaving her alone in the village. The idea is that Sei is broke and has no money to return, so she calls Kyung and asks for her help. Immediately, Kyung takes Lee and goes to help her. But the road is far, so they get delayed and stay on the road until night. But suddenly, Lee stops the car and looks suspicious. Kyung thinks he has criminal tendencies and will finish her off, especially since she sees he has a digging tool with him. But it turns out he just wants to bury an animal that died on the road. Kyung goes to bury the animal with him, and at that moment, she gets a call from Sei informing her she found a car and got in it. Kyung is upset that she came all this way for nothing, basically. But she takes advantage of the nice weather and sits talking to him, and they spend a very nice time together. It turns out Sei made it difficult for the driver and got him to bring her back. He is surprised when he finds out from her that she came to the village to look for someone she knows. The next day, Kyung is surprised when she finds Park asking her to stay away from Lee because he doesn't want Lee to get hurt after discovering she is not his first love. Kyung tries to convince him she wants Lee to get better, but Park thinks her method is wrong and asks her to end the work between her and Lee and end their relationship completely because Lee has been hurt enough by Shin. At that moment, Shin comes and hears their words and asks him what he means. Park tells him the girl he was with on the day of the reunion party is the same first love of his brother. At that moment, Shin is shocked because the girl who was with him is Sei. At the same time, Lee feels he is starting to see scenes from his past, so he gets a headache, but he doesn't care, and goes to the meeting with the investor he agreed to work with. At that moment, Sei meets Lee and informs him she is the translator who will cooperate with him. Lee feels a strange feeling the first time he sees her. At the same time, Park hits Shin and thinks he is despicable and takes all the good opportunities from Lee. The important thing is that the meeting with the investor ends, and Lee doesn't remember that Sei is the same girl he saw with Shin. After that, Shin talks to Lee and informs him he found the love of his life, but he doesn't know it's Kyung, so Lee doesn't care about the matter. After that, he goes to meet the investor he met before at the horse race, and it is clear they have become close. The idea is that Man sees him talking to this investor and feels jealous and hates him. At the same time, Lee's mother sees Kyung and introduces her to her friends as Lee's girlfriend. But the surprise is that Shin comes and says she is his girlfriend. When Kyung asks him why he did that, he gets very nervous and tells her he just wanted to get her out of the situation she was in and doesn't know, of course, that he loves her. After that, Lee starts regaining his memories and wants to know why he was in the hospital some time ago. When he searches, he discovers he tried to end his life. At that moment, he understands that Shin is lying to him and goes to the bridge he jumped from, maybe to remember something. There, he actually starts remembering what happened and finds out he didn't try to end his life. There was actually someone arguing with him, and because of him, he fell off the bridge. But he doesn't remember who that person is. At the same time, Kyung keeps calling him, but he doesn't answer, so she decides to go to his house. After that, she stays sitting with him to monitor his condition. Suddenly, Lee's family comes to visit him. Lee gets nervous and quickly hides Kyung, and the girl keeps running from one place to another so they don't see her. The important thing is that she eventually escapes, but she escapes without wearing anything on her leg and sits on the road like a beggar. At that moment, Shin sees her and, of course, takes advantage of the moment to be romantic with her. But Lee comes and ruins his plan, takes Kyung from in front of him, takes her, and walks away. The next day, Shin informs Man he won't work with him anymore because he will work in his brother's company to be close to Kyung. He walks away and leaves him. At that moment, Man goes crazy and keeps yelling. But by coincidence, he sees pictures of Shin arguing with Lee at the bridge, so he goes after him to Lee's house and tells him he will work with him whether he wants to or not. He reminds him he is hiding from Lee that he fell in the river, but Lee hears them through the surveillance system in his house. Kyung tells him she will explain to him what happened, but he gets very tired at that moment and doesn't see Man threatening Shin with the pictures. At that moment, Lee's memories start attacking him again, so he is transferred to the hospital. At the same time, Shin is sitting drinking and can't accept the idea that Man is threatening him. Because of the drinking, he argues with two guys, and unfortunately, they keep hitting him. After that, Kyung arrives at the bar and is very upset when she sees him being hit. She remembers the moment of her father's death and breaks down. But at that moment, Lee comes, grabs those two guys, and breaks them. They get scared of him and run away. Suddenly, Lee loses consciousness because they drugged him at the hospital. Kyung is confused and is forced to support both of them until they reach the house. She stays next to them until morning. Of course, Lee wakes up and doesn't remember anything because of the sedative, as if he was drunk. After that, Shin sees Se, yells at her because he thinks she is trying to kick him out, but Se informs him she worked as a translator, so he takes her away and asks her to leave. He is afraid she will get close to Lee, and his memories will return. The idea is that she refuses to leave, so he talks to her about the person she is looking for and tells her he definitely doesn't want her in his life and is running away from her, which is why she hasn't found him until now. She gets very upset by his words and actually leaves. After that, Kyung gets a call from Lee asking them to meet. Kyung can't believe it and goes to him immediately. It becomes clear that her feelings started moving towards him. But while she is on the way, Shin calls her and asks her to meet him urgently to give her Lee's diaries. She is forced to go meet him, but when she arrives, she discovers he was basically making excuses to meet her, so she is forced to sit with him. At the same time, Lee arrives at the restaurant he agreed to meet Kyung in and sits waiting for her. But Se is there by coincidence and sits with him, especially when she finds out Kyung is coming. She sits talking to Lee and informs him she is looking for someone and wishes she could find him. Lee tells her he found his first love, whom he was looking for, but she turned out not to love him. Se tells him if she was his first love, she wouldn't have hurt him like that. She gets up, affected, and leaves him. After that, he returns home, and there he meets Kyung, who is staying up with him to make up for the outing that was ruined. Kyung repeats at that moment, wondering if her feelings are real or not, so she suddenly hugs Lee. He is shocked by her behavior, and she gets nervous and lies to him, telling him she was just checking his heartbeat. She walks away and leaves him. The next day, Kyung can't face Lee after what she did, so she hides from him. It is clear on Kyung that she is changed, and even On notices this conversation, but she doesn't care much. After that, Kyung sees Lee again and tries to hide. But this time, Shin sees her and feels she is silly. The important thing is that there will be a match that Lee and On must attend, and also, Shin is forced to go with Lee's old manager so he doesn't expose his secret. In the middle of all these events, Se gets a call from Kyung's mother, informing her that her family asked about her. At that moment, Se gets nervous, especially since Kyung's mother gave them the address where Se is. So Se gets scared because her family will return her to Italy against her will. Immediately, she runs away, but her mother's security men reach her. She gets in a car with someone driving fast and doesn't know who got in with him. She is finally able to escape from them, and the driver thinks the one with him is Kyung. But when he finds out it's Sae, he argues with her. She is basically upset because he is still in her life, even though they broke up. Immediately, she finds him in her face, so Shin yells at her to leave and even drops her off in the middle of the road. But when she leaves, he feels guilty, so he goes after her and brings her back. The important thing is that he wants to know Kyung's location so she can come back to him, so he tells her he will make a call and moves away from her. But he falls into his own trap. He is bitten by something. At that moment, he keeps making noise and makes Sae call the ambulance immediately. While waiting, Sae talks to him and informs him she was going to the village to look for her father. At that moment, Shin gets very tired and keeps screaming, not wanting to die in the forest. Finally, the ambulance comes, and it turns out Shin is overreacting. The bite was from a bee, not something dangerous as he thought. After that, Lee and Kyung come to them, and they all go together to the place where the match will be held. It turns out this place is Lee's village. At that moment, Lee thinks this is the same place where he met her for the first time. He doesn't remember she is his first love. When Kyung tries to confess the truth to him, he doesn't give her a chance and takes her to his grandmother's house. He regains his memories with her, and they spend a romantic time together. The important thing is the next day, Shin is very upset because Man is giving him orders, and he basically can't stand him. After that, Sae's mother is able to reach her and informs her she will return with her against her will. Sae tells her she became a translator and doesn't want to return to her old life where she doesn't do anything. Her mother yells at her and reminds her she knows she returned to Korea to look for her real father. She reminds her that the father who raised her is the one who helped them and saved them from getting lost. But Lee comes and cuts off their conversation and threatens her that if she takes Sae, he will file a lawsuit against Sae because she breached a contract with them. So her mother leaves to think about what she will do to bring her daughter back. After that, Sae talks to Lee and informs him that the father who raised her is a mafia boss. At that moment, Lee is shocked and regrets standing in her mother's face. We then see him walking in the village with Sae, and by coincidence meets someone he knows. The strange thing is that this person tells him he caused many problems for his grandmother, the most important problem being that someone died because of him. At that moment, Lee keeps thinking about this a lot. Suddenly, he feels his head will explode, so he starts remembering his past. As soon as a car passes in front of him, he remembers when he was begging his mother not to leave and abandon him. He runs after the car, breaks down, and falls in the same place he fell when he was a child. Sae quickly pulls him, and Lee keeps staring at her, remembering that the girl who saved him went down to get his medal for him, and at that time, she didn't return, and everyone thought she died. He leaves Sae and runs to Kyung and tells her he is happy she is still alive. At that moment, Shin sees them together and feels jealous. At night, Sae's mother meets Kyung and asks her to convince Sae to return with her. She informs her that when Sae was in Italy, she dated Shin for a period. Kyung is surprised that Shin hid such an important thing from them. She leaves, gathering the threads together. She remembers when Park told Shin he dated Lee's first love, so she understands that Sae is Lee's first love. Immediately, she goes to Shin and asks him why he hid such an important thing from them. He tells her he thought the matter wouldn't matter much, especially since Lee thinks she is his first love. Shin is upset because Kyung loved Lee and is trying to get close to her. At that moment, Lee comes and argues with him and moves him away from Kyung. Shin pushes Lee into the swimming pool. Here, Lee remembers that Shin pushed him before, but he still doesn't see his face clearly. The important thing is that Kyung jumps into the water after him to save him, and Shin jumps after them and saves her and Lee. After that, Lee wakes up and is surprised when he finds Sae next to him. She tells him Kyung is busy, so she asked her to take care of him in her absence. But Lee feels she is strange, and her treatment of him is much stranger. At the same time, Kyung is busy reading Lee's diaries. Because of these diaries, she feels he is very innocent, and her love for him increases. But despite that, she decides to stay away, and it turns out she left Sae next to him on purpose because Sae is his first love, and they must get back together. At the same time, Shin goes to visit Kyung's family and wants to get close to them so he can make Kyung love him. By coincidence, he sees Lee's diaries and understands that Kyung was reading them. He is upset by the idea that Kyung doesn't see him no matter what he does, and all her attention is on Lee. Kyung then returns home and sees Shin joking with her mother, so she is surprised by his presence and tells her mother he has been waiting for her since early to surprise her. Of course, she doesn't care. At that moment, Shin takes her out and confesses to her that he loves her. She apologizes to him and informs him she doesn't feel any feelings towards him. He gets upset with her and reminds her that Lee will leave her and go to Sae as soon as he knows she is his first love. But Lee comes carrying Sae, and it turns out she drank until she lost consciousness. But Lee is focused on Shin and Kyung and is very upset by their presence together. After that, Shin goes to burn Lee's diaries. But as he walks, someone comes from behind him and takes them. It is clear he is being watched. The next day, we see Lee searching for the truth of what happened to him on the day he fell into the river. At the same time, Shin goes to meet the person who took the diaries and threatens him. As soon as he gets close to him, he makes security catch him, but it turns out he is just a fan who wants Shin's autograph. The person threatening Shin is standing outside, so Shin runs after him, but suddenly, a car appears and hits him. After that, Shin disappears, and Man is worried about him, not because he loves him, of course, but because Shin is a treasure to him. The important thing is that surveillance cameras capture Shin standing at the bridge, so Man screams because he is afraid for his job. But Shin didn't jump at that time, so Man is reassured. But Lee is determined to discover what happened on the day he fell into the river and is able to access the videos from the surveillance cameras that were near the river. It turns out that actually, Shin is the one who threw himself into the river, and Lee tried to stop him. At the same time, Shin remembers the day of the incident when Lee was broken down, and he went after him, thinking about the day he saved him. Shin felt that Lee regretted saving him. At that moment, Lee got angry and was about to argue with him, but Shin played the victim and told him he also suffers from the idea that he must achieve his and his family's dreams because he is the older brother. He also feels he was deprived of living a normal life and feels at that moment he has no more energy and needs to end all the suffering. He jumps off the bridge. At that moment, Lee pulls him with his injured hand, but Shin refuses this help and tries to let go of it. But Lee keeps holding his hand and tells him that if time went back, he would save him again because he doesn't regret it. But at that moment, the balance was lost, and they both fell. But Lee, as he was falling, his head hit very hard, so Shin breaks down, takes him out quickly, and it turns out this is the secret Shin was hiding. Shin then wakes up from these memories and keeps walking alone, sad. The next day, Kyung offers Sae to help her find her father. Of course, Sae can't believe it. Kyung tries to call numbers of people who had a relationship with Sae's father, and indeed one of them knows his location. Sae can't believe she found her father and is very excited for their first meeting. After that, she goes to meet him, and as soon as she sees him, she hugs him. But her father treats her coldly, so Sae is so upset that she makes it difficult for her father. He confesses to her that he is not her real father, and it turns out her mother gave her the wrong information and sent her to this person so she would hate her father. So Sae goes and argues with her mother, very angry. After that, Kyung is able to reach Shin's location and notices he is upset, so she tries to comfort him. He confesses to her at that moment that he is the one who tried to end his life and tells her about his suffering because of his family, who don't care about his feelings. The most important thing to them is for him to be successful. Lee enters on them and gets upset when he sees Kyung with Shin. He thinks they love each other, so he argues with Kyung and hurts her with words, telling her he no longer loves her, that she is a harmful person, and that her father was relieved when she died back then. At that moment, Kyung hits him with a pen, so he walks away, very upset. Suddenly, Kyung gets a call from her director, informing her that Tae threatened to reveal the truth to Lee. She gets nervous and walks away quickly. We see Lee at that time, drowning in his memories and thinking about Kyung. At that moment, Kyung appears in front of him and yells at him because he turned off his phone and made her worry about him. But without thinking, Lee runs to her and hugs her. Honestly, you have no blood. The important thing is that because of this situation, their relationship improves a lot, and they spend a nice time together. The next day, Shin returns to the spotlight and is surprised that the person who threatened him published the pictures, and now everyone knows that Lee fell because of him. But Man covers up the matter, and that's because if Shin heard, his work would be destroyed. Because of these events, Shin decides to take a year off, but his mother refuses because the most important thing to her is money, and Shin never listened to her before. But this time, Shin doesn't listen to her and insists on making his own decisions. He meets Lee after that, who deals with him kindly and encourages him on the decision to take a year off. After that, Sei sees an old picture of her mother with her father standing next to her. She is very affected and can't believe she finally found him, but after that, her mother comes again and wants to take her back by force. They argue, and at that moment, Kyung's mother is with her and tells her that if she had known she was running away from her mother, she wouldn't have accepted letting her live in her house. Of course, she refuses to take her back to her house, so she is forced to leave with her mother. But she escapes on the way, and a mysterious person appears and helps her escape. But the surprise is that this person turns out to be her father, and Sei recognizes him through the picture and hugs him. She can't believe herself and is very happy, especially when she finds out he was also looking for her. But Sei feels her father's behavior is a bit strange, especially when he takes her phone and argues with her. At the same time, Kyung is working on her research and decides to remove the side effects of the procedure. But there is a problem. Lee will remember his first love, and at that time, he will distance himself from her. But Kyung goes to meet Lee and is very upset because this might be their last meeting. The next day, Lee gets a call from the police, informing the officer they reached the person who was blackmailing Shin, and it turns out this person is Sei's father. He is a dangerous criminal. We see him standing in front of many pictures of his daughter, Shin, and Lee, and it turns out he was actually monitoring them. As for Lee, he gets a call from Tae after that and asks to meet him. As soon as he sees him, he informs him that Kyung experimented on him, and that to her, he is just a test subject. Lee breaks down from the idea that Kyung deceived him. Tae tells him he will perform a procedure on him to return him to his old state, and this is an experiment Tae wants to try again. He basically deals with Lee as if he is a test subject. The director then goes to Tae at that moment and is shocked when he sees him locking the operating room on himself and Lee. He understands he wants to do something stupid, so he yells at him to open up and tells him that all his experiments on test subjects resulted in the subjects dying, but he doesn't care. And to make Lee agree to the procedure, he tells him the director also participated with Kyung in deceiving him. At that moment, Lee breaks down and agrees to his second procedure to regain all his old memories. Indeed, the procedure succeeds, and Lee remembers all his erased memories. Because of that, his life is destroyed again, and he keeps locking himself up all the time. Kyung then goes to meet Lee's father and informs him that Lee can get better and be good, but that depends on their support for him. So his father returns home and finds his wife yelling at their children. At that moment, he argues with her and informs her he won't allow her to treat their children harshly anymore. He decides to take a final stance and be the man of the house. Her word is the one that will go. After that, he gives them clothes to wear, and the clothes are similar so they feel like one family, and they all go out together. But it rains, and they are forced to return home. Lee is surprised at that moment that Kyung came to the house in his absence and rearranged the rooms to make them psychologically comfortable. But Lee still can't stand Kyung because she deceived him, so he ruins the room and keeps crying. After that, Man comes to gloat at Lee and tells him he has returned to being a failure like the first time he met him. Lee's father gets upset and asks him to leave. At that moment, Lee's mother goes crazy and attacks Man, giving him a slap on his face. He falls to the ground from the force of the slap, or the force of the shock, whichever is closer. At that moment, On's mother comes and throws papers in Man's face and informs him she found out he is despicable, and so she won't let her daughter work with him. After that, Lee's mother sits with him, and Shin is with them. She informs him that when Lee was injured as a small child, she wished it was him who got injured, because at that time, Lee was the one useful to her. At that moment, Shin is shocked. His mother continues her words and justifies her harsh actions by saying she was a volleyball player. But she had growth problems and didn't grow tall, so she was forced to quit the sport she loved. When she saw Lee's athletic ability, she decided to make him achieve what she couldn't achieve. When Lee got injured, she decided to make Shin achieve her dream. She apologizes to them because she destroyed them just so they could achieve her dream. Their father enters after that and apologizes to them because he followed their mother without thinking. For the first time, they hug each other as a family. At the same time, we see Sei forced to deal with her crazy father and has discovered he is mentally ill and not normal. She is planning to escape, definitely, but he doesn't give her a chance and puts sleeping pills in her juice. When she wakes up, she finds herself in a strange place full of pictures of her and the rest of her friends. At that moment, she gets very scared, especially when she finds out from her father that he was monitoring her from the time she went to the village to look for him. And even when he knew she was going to the reunion party, he went after her, and at that time saw her arguing with Shin and breaking up with him. She gets even more scared when she finds out he is the one who was threatening Shin to take revenge on him because he upset her and broke up with her. At that moment, she sees a picture of Kyung, so her fear increases. She begs him not to hurt her because she was kind to her, but her deranged father thinks all people are bad and must be hurt. He locks her up and leaves. She tries to escape, but fails. She is very scared for Kyung, especially since she guesses from her father's words about Kyung that he is the same person who killed Kyung's father. At the same time, Se's father is chasing Kyung, but her mother appears suddenly, so he gets scared and leaves quickly. After that, Shin talks to Lee and they find out Se is his first love. He is shocked and feels his feelings are confused because he basically loves Kyung now and doesn't care about Se, who is actually his first love. The next day, immediately, we see Kyung asking to stop the memory erasure experiment because of its negative effects, which make the person see memories that are not real, like Lee thinking she was his first love. At that moment, Lee enters and talks to the research officials and informs them his life changed for a period because of the experiment, and he felt like an important person, confident in himself. But with time, he discovered he could trust himself if he wanted to, and so he doesn't encourage anyone to try this experiment because a person's memories shouldn't be played with. Because of Lee's words, the committee decides to stop the experiment, and not only that, Tae is also punished because he basically performed a second experiment on Lee without anyone knowing the consequences of this experiment. At the same time, Se remembers when she was little, and children always bullied her because she didn't have a father, and Kyung was the only one who defended her. She keeps blaming herself because she didn't listen to her mother's words and insisted on looking for her father, who turned out to be crazy. She is hopeless about getting out of here, but suddenly she finds an ATM machine and has Kyung's credit card with her, so she withdraws money from it to send Kyung a message and look for the address the money was withdrawn from. Indeed, Kyung starts looking until she finds the address and asks Shin to help her and go to the address the money was withdrawn from to find out who is withdrawing from her account. At the same time, Lee is looking for Se's father's information after finding out from the officer he is a criminal. He is shocked when he finds out he is the same person who killed Kyung's father. At that moment, he is afraid for Se and reaches the address Kyung told him about and finds out Se is inside. He breaks the door and takes her out. At the same time, Se's father himself goes to attack Kyung and ambushes her because she entered his territory back then without knowing she is the daughter of the man who killed her father. It turns out he wants to kill her too, so she doesn't find out he is the killer. But he doesn't understand she already knows he is the killer. The important thing is that seconds before he kills her, Lee arrives and moves him away from her. The police arrive after that and arrest him, but as he is leaving, he sees Se, so he goes crazy and keeps screaming because she escaped from the place he locked her in. It turns out Se's father killed Kyung's father because he was monitoring Se and her mother after they ran away from him and thought Kyung's father married Se's mother. The next day, Kyung wakes up from a nightmare in which she sees what happened to her father at that time. Se's mother comes and apologizes to her because she was married to a deranged person, and because of her, she lost her father. It turns out Kyung's mother knew Se's father was the one who killed her husband, but she didn't treat Se badly because she is not to blame. After that, Se visits Kyung, broken down and embarrassed. But Kyung informs her she is not to blame and hugs her to calm her down. Se leaves after that to meet Lee and informs him that Kyung is the one who saved Lee's life when he fell into the river. Se found the medal after that in her house because basically, Kyung forgot it and forgot her conversation with Lee because of her shock at her father's death after that. At that moment, Lee understands, but he is still determined that Kyung is his first love. He goes to meet her, but unfortunately, she has traveled. After several years, we see Kyung being honored for her achievements in the medical field, and it is clear from her words that her point of view has completely changed. She now believes we don't have to get rid of bad memories. On the contrary, we can live with them and learn how to fix them. At the same time, we see Lee, who has become very famous after returning to work on his company and has become a very successful person. After man used to despise him, he now wishes he could surpass him. As for Shin himself, he is living a happy life with his family, who have finally started treating each other like normal human beings and have been cured of their obsession with fame and success. We then see Kyung after she returns to Korea and goes to the place where she first accepted Lee. It is clear she remembered past memories and knew she is his first love, but suddenly she finds him in her face, and they were finally able to fix everything between them and become able to be together. And that's how the series ends. If you enjoyed the video, please like the video and subscribe to the channel.